So for over the last decade, central banks have been furiously buying gold. China and Russia, they have been hoarding it, and countries across Europe and Asia, they have also been buying gold. They know it is sound money and holds value, and more importantly, it has zero counterparty risk. In fact, the United States has the world's biggest gold reserves, coming in at over 8,100 tons. Now, I know a lot of you all don't believe it, but let us just assume that it's all there. But here's the big question. Why doesn't the US Treasury add more gold to their reserves? Why don't they get the Federal Reserve to just print trillions of dollars and buy up the entire world's gold supply? After all, gold is priced in US dollars, right? And this is a fundamental question that we need to answer today. There's only one true reason why America can never buy gold to increase their reserves, and at the same time, they cannot afford to sell any of their gold as well. Now, this is a very interesting dilemma that the United States dug itself into, and once you understand this, you will never look at gold the same way again. Now, if I ask you what is America's greatest weapon, you might say it's their nuclear arsenal, maybe it's their military machine, maybe it's American capitalism. But I would argue it is actually the US dollar. With the dollar as the reserve currency, America essentially controls the world through financial power. We must understand how dependent the world is on the dollar today. Over 60% of foreign debt is issued in dollars, and when it comes to global trade, around 70% are settled in US dollars. And this means there will always be demand for the dollar, and this can be weaponized by US monetary policy, whether it is intentional or not. And we just need to look at the havoc interest rates are causing to the rest of the world, because American monetary policy is front-running the rest of the world when it comes to rate hikes. We are seeing a massive global dollar shortage. And that's why countries are defaulting and inflation is soaring for many that need to import their food and fuel. In fact, interest rates are becoming weapons of mass economic destruction. Jerome Powell is essentially the master of the universe today. He could literally destroy economies 50 basis points at a time. And all this is through the power of the US dollar. Now gold is the exact opposite of the dollar. The dollar is about controlling the world through inflation and deflation, while gold is all about being a true store of value. And we know the US dollar is probably never going back to the gold standard because it restricts the Federal Reserve's ability to increase their balance sheet with sheer impunity. But even as a reserve asset or store of value, America cannot afford to add a single gold brick to their vaults. Now, I want us to understand America's relationship with gold. It was not always ignored or the enemy of the US dollar. In fact, gold was America's greatest ally and asset at one point of time. It took the United States all the way to the top of the financial world and helped it become a global superpower. And here's the condensed version. The dollar only became the reserve currency because of two historical events. Now, one was in the 1970s when the US struck an agreement with Saudi Arabia to only accept dollars for their oil. This effectively gave the dollar a monopoly on the world's most important energy resource. If any country wanted oil, they needed dollars, and this is called the petrodollar agreement. But even before this, gold played an equally powerful role. During World War II, America stockpiled an incredible mountain of reserves by selling weapons to the Allies for gold bullion. And because America had the most gold reserves and other countries were more or less broke, this led to the Bretton Woods Agreement. So the dollar was pegged to gold at $35 an ounce, and all other currencies were pegged to the dollar in turn. And this is why we still have the legacy system of every currency being compared to the US dollar. Now, this system was eventually ended in 1971 by President Nixon because America needed to increase its balance sheet and conduct deficit spending. Was fighting a lot of wars at that point of time. And we need to understand how much the Federal Reserve hates the idea of gold as money today. They truly hate it to the core because gold prevents them from printing money and playing around with interest rates. Now, Ben Bernanke, the former Fed chair, has argued that gold is not money and even said no one really understands gold prices and I don't pretend to understand them either. And guys, this is called acting dumb. And more recently, when Congress asked Powell if a return to the gold standard would be possible, he told everyone it would be so damaging to the economy and how it would cause havoc on stable prices and employment rates. But the real answer is actually on the Fed's own website. They state, the US mines a lot of gold, but we are not the biggest producer. The bigger suppliers of gold would have more control over our monetary policy. If the United States recognize gold as money, other countries like Russia and China, which are the world's biggest gold producers, will have more financial power. So it's just not about protecting the ability to print money and export inflation away. They don't want to crown China or Russia as a new financial superpower. And this comes to the core reason why the US can never increase their gold reserves. And we know the saying, right? Actions speak louder than words. So just imagine a situation where the United States decides to stockpile more gold as an asset. It will send the ultimate contradictory message. They will be undermining the strength of the US dollar. They'll be like waving a gigantic red flag to the world, telling everyone that gold is actually true money. Gold is valuable enough for even the issuer of US dollars to hold it as a store of value. Because gold is priced in dollars, America would effectively be selling off their own dollars in exchange for gold. They are admitting the reserve currency has a lesser value. And this will spark a mad rush to gold from everyone, right? Domestic Americans will start buying gold. International investors will start hoarding it. Central banks around the world will dump their dollars in order to get a precious metal. That will cause the dollar to devalue against gold. And if all those dollars come flooding back to the United States, local inflation will soar. And we already have countries like China slowly de-dollarizing, selling off their US treasuries and taking the proceeds to buy gold. The United States doesn't want to give another excuse for other countries to do the same. And this is why the US reserves has stayed constant without change. You can see the Treasury has not acquired any additional gold for the past few decades. It is a flat line that can't get any flatter. Now, ever since 1980, the gold reserves have been stagnant at 8,133 tons, or just slightly over $11 billion worth. Now, the Treasury measures its gold reserves not in weight, but in a fixed amount of dollars. And this is where things really get quite interesting. We can see the gold reserves are almost 262 million ounces, but it is recorded as just $11 billion. And that's because the United States is valuing gold at just $42.22 an ounce. And back in 1934, the Treasury issued gold certificates to the Fed in exchange for money. But the certificates were priced in dollar terms. This is very important. So the Fed gave the Treasury $11 billion over the years to spend in exchange for $11 billion worth of gold, not 262 million physical ounces. That's the difference. And this means if the price of gold was to revalue up to today's price of around $1,700 an ounce, the Fed still only has an $11 billion claim to the gold. And this means that now they are only entitled to 6.5 million ounces instead of 262 million ounces. So the Treasury can actually screw the Federal Reserve by revaluing gold up to its market price. They only need to give the Fed 6.5 million ounces and they can sell the rest on the open market for over $400 billion. Now the US government has additional $400 billion on their books to spend in this way. But there is a reason why they can't do this, and it's not because they love the Fed. If the United States actually sells their gold reserves, this is a signal that the US economy is in deep trouble. More importantly, it is telling the world that the US dollar is also in trouble. Now, you would think that if the US wants to keep the dollar supreme, they would instill confidence by letting go of all their gold reserves, right? After all, according to the Fed, gold isn't money, right? Now, the challenge is that the world isn't stupid, right? We are in 2022 and every monkey in a zoo knows the US dollar has been debased. There has been too much money printing over the decades, once in 2020 and multiple times in 2008. Trillions of dollars have been printed up and the dollar's purchasing power has fallen by 97% over the last 100 years. So ironically, America's gold reserves are one of the few real assets that instills confidence in their financial system. Even though they hate gold, gold is actually giving their economy a lifeline and is helping the dollar retain some fragments of credibility. And this means the US is trapped in an impossible decision with their gold reserves. Because of their over-reliance on the dollar and to keep up appearances, they have frozen their own gold reserves. They can't buy or sell gold anymore. They cannot add any more gold to their reserves because it will undermine the value of the dollar. Other central banks will see through it and start hoarding even more gold. They also cannot sell any gold because the world will lose trust in the American economy because it is selling away one of the few real assets that they have. So whatever gold that is sitting in the New York Fed, it will be frozen in time. It is just symbolic wealth and it can't be used for any meaningful purpose. It is not really participating in the global economy. They might as well just put it in a museum. They also can't revalue their gold upwards to cover the debt because it will make China and Russia the richest countries in the world with all their below ground gold reserves. Remember, they are the largest gold producers in the world. China is the top producer while Russia comes in at number 2. And that's why I don't really pay attention to the US gold reserves. The Fed has no choice but to deny its existence as real money. There was an interesting debate between Senator Ron Paul versus Ben Bernanke about gold. Ron Paul directly asked if gold was money, and Ben Bernanke said no, calling it a precious metal. He then followed up by asking why central banks hold it. Bernanke answered, because it is a long-term tradition. And I believe that should be clear enough what the Fed thinks about gold. So we need to understand that gold took America all the way to the top, but now it is the greatest enemy of the US dollar. And as we move towards a multipolar world, we are going to see a battle between two monetary systems. One that revolves around the US dollar system, which I call the financial matrix, and the other will be based on real hard assets like gold or currencies backed up by commodities like oil. And this is what China and Russia are probably planning to do. They are trying to plan a soft transition towards commodity currencies. And if we see through the layers of the yuan and ruble for Russian gas deal, it is actually telling the world that there are alternative options that you can use to buy commodities. You don't just need the dollar anymore. Now, I hate to do any predictions or forecasts, you all know that, but I am very confident of what's going to come in this financial battle. The United States will continue to defend the dollar system, and their next likely move will be developing a CBDC. They will want to integrate it with the SWIFT system to make the dollar matrix even stronger. And the East, on the other hand, will continue to de-dollarize and stockpile even more gold. They are choosing the hard money route. Now, it is very likely that we will have two separate and rather distinct monetary systems in the future. One part of the world will be transacting in dollars if they want goods and commodities from the West, and the other part will be transacting in commodity currencies for products and resources from the East. Now, there's going to be a lot of chaos in the interim, but I'm in the camp that hard money like gold will win out in the end. The dollar is still a fiat currency, which means it will continue to lose value over time. It is inevitable. So America might have the world's largest gold reserves, but it is both an asset and a liability to them. But as individuals, we need to see the writing on the wall and not believe what the Federal Reserve tells us about gold. They have an incentive to deny the reality that gold is money. They have to defend the dollar system at all costs, but countries big and small are seeing through the charade. And that's why they are stockpiling gold like never before. Now, if the United States wants to stockpile more gold, it will have to abandon the dollar as a reserve currency, but it will lose too much in the process. I'm not just talking about cheap borrowing costs, but the ability to control the world through money printing and interest rates. And we shouldn't worry about how much gold America has, but how much we personally possess. And that's why as this market continues to collapse, gold is on my shopping list. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Can America ever buy gold or sell their reserves? What do you think China and Russia are planning with their gold stockpiles? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe. Be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through this crazy time.